Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. A Better You in 2014. Joining us on set, Daryl Joseph, well-known psychologist. Daryl, good morning. I have 10 New Year's Day resolutions. How do I stick to them? How do I become a better human being?
Well, Happy New Year. Well, first of all, don't make resolutions. Set goals.
Okay.
There's a difference.
I'm going to remember that.
Yeah. Resolutions usually are often very dreamy ideas that don't really have much meat behind it. Like, I want to lose weight and I want to get this and I want this and I want that.
Pounds. I mean, really.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. But when you set goals, there's... I can't go into SMART goals because Jody, as I was telling him just now, already took that, all right? But when you set proper goals, you have targets that you can actually attain and you have plans behind them and ways of monitoring those goals so that you know where you're going, all right?
Now, so you're setting goals. How do you know what's a good goal for you? Really, how do you assess where you are in your life?
Right. Well, not to rehash, but I have to sort of rehash something like what was said before, okay? But goals definitely should be specific, meaning that you must have a definite target in mind. So, for example, if your goal is to lose weight, your goal is simply not, if you want to lose weight, you're not going to simply say, well, okay, I want to lose weight. You're going to say, I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to lose 30 pounds, right? Which also makes it measurable, meaning that you can chart exactly how you're going. So you're going to say something like, I want to lose 20 pounds in 6 months. All right? So there's action behind it now, which is the A, all right, which means that you have to actually have a plan as to how you're going to go about doing this. Well, I'm going to be eating my low-carb foods, all right? And I'm going to be doing strength training.
I don't know about that.
All right, okay? So that, again, that gives you a certain degree of solidness behind it, all right? And it's time-bound, because we're talking about within a 6-month time frame, for example, and the R, which usually means realistic, means that, you know, you've kind of set it in a way that it's actually doable. You're not going to say you're going to lose 100 pounds in a month.
Do you find a lot of people around this time, they really, in terms of that assessment of what you have achieved in 2013, do people tend to see the good or do they see only the bad? Do you think people can really analyze things? How do you know if you've done anything at all with your life?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't think a lot of people actually take the time to write these things down. A lot of people have them in their head, but I can tell you from somebody who is in the practice, right? I can describe to you exactly what my goals are for this year, personally.
Do you mind sharing that with us so we could understand? Even give an example. So I can use myself then. I have identified 4 things that I would like to see as goals, and I have identified timelines to put these 4 things. So I've given myself 6 months.
Right.
And is that a typical example? And then after 6 months, if I realize that I've achieved nothing, do I give myself another 6 months? Do you find people tend to do that?
I don't know how much evaluating people do. I think what happens is that people begin very excited and they come up with all sorts of ideas, right? And then as time begins to slip by, because they don't have a proper way of measuring how well they're doing, you find that at some point they're going to look back and say, well, oh my gosh, you know, I'm the same weight as I was at the beginning of the year, or I've actually put on a little bit. So you tend to get a bit of a loss of enthusiasm and a loss of drive, and people then tend to kind of let it slip. And then when you get into the second half of the year, you start saying, well, you know, we reach October, it's just Christmas, just I might as well just get through the year. So, you know, the cycle tends to repeat itself.
And setting personal goals as well, in terms of, you know, I think people really don't look at their lives. You measure, like I do, personal goals in terms of myself, but I break it down, emotional, mental, spiritual, and I also look at economic goals as well that I set for myself. Do you break it up in that? And then how do you avoid setting about 100 goals for yourself if you're breaking it up?
Right. Well, again, you have to make sure that what you're trying to do is actually attainable. So there's a dream board or a wish board where you write down everything that you could possibly want to attain in the next 12 months. But then for each one now, you have to go through and determine for yourself whether this is something you can actually do, whether this is reasonable, or whether maybe this is something you should defer.
You know, when I called you yesterday and I said, I want to make this positive. I want to talk about a better you.
Yes.
People sometimes are in situations where they just do not know. I mean, you speak to people every single day. Do people really know or understand? What are some of the common mistakes that people make when analyzing a situation or not recognizing the long-term detrimental impact or effects of a situation?
Okay, all right. Well, I'd like to address that question, but I want to address it a little differently, right? Okay. I want to go through a little acronym that I hope people can latch onto and maybe remember. And I think it will actually address a lot of what you're asking there, right? And the acronym spells out the word happy. All right, so that is not too hard to remember. The first letter, H, is for harmony, And by harmony, what I'm talking about is you can't live your life believing and saying one thing, but then acting and thinking differently. So you can't say, for example, I'm all for marriage, and I'm all for supporting family life, and then actively working to destroy either your own marriage or somebody else's. When you have that kind of disharmony inside of you, it creates discord, which leads to anxiety, which leads to unhappiness. So you go around with a certain degree of unhappiness. A is for action, and this is a big one. Too many people don't take hold of the things and take control of the things in their life that they actually can do something about. And they simply get into a sort of a feel sorry for myself kind of a mood or kind of a phase. So for example, things like you might be in a relationship that's not going well for you. For God's sake, get out of it. Do what you need to do to get out of it.
What?
Speak to somebody.
Okay, when
do
you
what
finish
you have to
the
do.
acronym, I'm going to
All
ask
right?
you a question.
Okay. It might be a job that's just not working out for you. You know, you might need to upgrade your skills. Well, for God's sake, you know, find out about the different ways that you can upgrade your skills and get out there and do it. All right? So action, positivity. And that's where I was talking about now, the half empty and half full glass scenario. I think you know the analogy, all right?
I do.
One person looks at the glass as being half empty, and all they see are the things that are not working, the things they don't have, the things that are not going well for them, and discouraging yourself at the same time. You look at the glass as being half full instead. You see what you have. You know what you have to be thankful for. You know what makes you happy. You know what things are working well for you. And you also have a bit of anticipation that that glass can fill because you know there's more space. So your outlook is different. And I think, you know, that's one of the ways that you measure, you know, how happy a person is, all right, by the measure of positivity they have. The second P is for people who uplift. You must have people around you and relationships in your life that uplift you. If there are people who are dead weight, people who are discouraging you, people who are making you lose your confidence in yourself, making you second guess yourself, people who are draining you emotionally or financially, because I know some people have people in their life who drain them financially, you need to do something and get rid of those relationships. You need to modify them or get rid of them completely. And the last one, why, is simply to yield. And yield simply means no matter how much you do, there are always going to be some things that are not going to be the way that you want them to be. And you have to learn to accept the things that you cannot change.
When do you know, like it's funny when you talk about get out of it and that part of it, why do people really have such a hard time in accepting change? Or, you know, you sit and you complain about a situation and there is that mental level of uncertainty.
Yes.
In where, you know, I always say, and I think you've told me this, if it doesn't feel right, it sometimes normally isn't right.
Yeah.
Why do people really have that inability to address it and to fix it and to take the risk of to move out of it?
Well, various reasons. A lot of times it's fear, because, I mean, as human beings, we're kind of conditioned to be comfortable with what we know. Anytime you're jumping into unknown territory, there's so many different things that could possibly happen to your detriment. You know, you might just be afraid of doing it. To some extent, some people are a bit lazy as well, because change takes effort. You can't sit down comfortably on your couch and expect things to change. You have to get up and actually do something. If it's a relationship, you might have to confront the individual and deal with their reaction to it and how that makes you feel. But you've got to keep the end result in mind, all right? Sometimes, you know, some people have a very, what we call a low locus of control. And that simply means they feel as though life is happening to them constantly and they have no power of their own to change or affect things. We see that playing itself out a lot in a lot of our people, a lot of our citizens who are, let's say, of less financial means, for example. And there's a prevailing sort of attitude that somebody has to come and do something, right, to help or to. I'm not saying that nobody has to do anything, but if you're going to be dependent completely on that, you know, you're going to be going through your life always thinking that you can't do something. So, you know, those are some of the reasons why. But generally, you know, I would say, you know, change is hard. Change is never something easy.
But how do people really become, you know, you talk about the accomplishment of happiness, and I think most people, that would be their dream, to be happy.
Yes.
And is it that we just don't appreciate the things that we have? Is it that we just understand the things that we have are not good for us, but you stay with it because you're comfortable? Why do people not achieve happiness?
We have a couple of traits in us which, you know, they work well as human beings. They work well in some situations, but they don't work well in other situations. And I'll give you an example. You have, let's say you're a person who likes toys, like I do, technical toys. All right? So I have this shiny new tablet, and I'm very excited by it, and, you know, I love to, you know, do stuff with it. And then 6 months later, they release a new one. And now, all of a sudden, my own is not so appealing to me anymore because there's something newer. There's something that has some feature or some capability I don't have, or just that it's something I don't have in my hand generally. It might not necessarily be better, but I don't have it. We have a tendency towards wanting what we don't have. And while that could be good in terms of helping you to be ambitious and to go after things, like everything else in life, there has to be a certain level of moderation. Because if you allow that desire to get out of control, you will be like you ever seen a greyhound race? You ever seen it?
Just runs in
yeah,
circles.
you'll just be running, you'll just be chasing down that rabbit for the rest of your life. And you never actually catch it.
A lot of times, looking at economic or jobs, as well, people tend to stay in situations. Do you do that professional assessment? How do you really assess it? Do you simply measure success with economic success? How do you do that?
No. You know, it's a bit of a myth that people work just for money. Yeah? People do work to get paid, but people stay in jobs where they feel fulfilled, where they feel happy, where they feel a part of the institution or organization, where they feel they're making a contribution, where they feel that what they're doing is valued.
So let's look on the flip side. If from the employee to the employer, how do you really know if that is not? Because I look at every relationship in my life like a relationship, even with my job. If I don't like it or I don't like the people, I don't like the, I would just say, well, it's not worth it. But I've been blessed to work with great people.
Good for I've been notoriously proactive through the course of my, I mean, I have my own company now, so it's different, all right? But I've never been one to tolerate a situation that I wasn't happy in for too long, because my personal happiness is very important to me.
But people say that they will hold on to commitment, and it like in a job, people don't just work for economic reasons, but then they're going to say, I hate my job, but leave and do what?
And there's where we see the fear coming in again, all right? So leave and do what? The fact of the matter is you may not know what's out there, but if you're just going to stick in a corner and think to yourself, you know, I've been in this job for 5 years now, and if I go out there, I don't know what I'm going to meet. It might be... If you're just simply going to take a negative outlook, in other words, the half-empty glass, you never will have the confidence to get out there and see what there actually is. And who knows, you might actually find something better.
How do you really make that move to leave? Leave anything?
Yeah, you have to, first of all, the first thing is determine that that's really the best course of action.
And how do you determine that?
Sometimes people feel like doing something, as in, I'm not getting along well these days with my supervisor, or I have, you know, somebody in my department who is irritating me, so I'm going to leave the job. Hold on a second. What financial obligations do you have? What commitments do you have?
And then if you look at that, suppose you stay in the job forever.
Right, hold on. Hold on, wait. All right. You also have to look, in addition to your financial commitments and so on, you must have an idea of what your plan, what your career plan is like, where you want to be, where you're going. How does this particular job fit into your career plan, all right? After you've determined all of those things and you figure, well, okay, I can take a risk and I can leave this, I can possibly get something equivalent or better. It's not going to affect me too negatively. Now you actually have to get out there and do something about it. You have to dust off that resume. You have to get back into action mode and start sending out applications, start letting the word being known.
Starting something new.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times people end the year either ending a relationship or beginning a relationship. It could be in any form of your life, really. What advice will you have for them? Because I always, you know, at the end of every year, I do this assessment and I kind of say, well, this situation isn't working, so I'm going to get out of this right now. And that's what I do at the end of every year.
Yes. Listen, you have one life to live, okay? And happiness is not something that another person can experience for you. It's something you have to experience yourself. I would say not just at the end of the year, but on a regular basis.
Maybe that's why I have problems changing.
Evaluate the things that in your life, the things that either contribute to your happiness or take away from them. Make adjustments where necessary. Sometimes you may need to simply make, as I said, a modification, or an alteration to a particular situation. For example, in a relationship, you might not be communicating well with your partner. You might need to sit them down and have a real heart-to-heart with them about things that are bothering you and begin to do something about it, all right? Don't just simply sit down and allow things to happen. But for things that you determine after you've looked at everything that they're just not contributing anything to your happiness, you need to let go.
How do you know if, I know that it's a funny and a very stupid question, but how do you know if something is not really contributing to your happiness? Because people look at happiness as different reasons. Stability may be a reason for happiness for some people.
Oftentimes the answer is a lot simpler than we make it out to be. Very often what we do is that we convince ourselves that this is really a decision I have to make when the answer is really clear in front of you. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody sit down on the couch And they begin talking. I like to use relationship examples. They begin talking about the relationship. And after 5 minutes, I say, so why are you trying to convince yourself to stay? You know, tell me, why do you want to stay in this? And most of the times, they don't really have any answer other than, well, I love him, or I love her, or I reached 30. This big thing about 30.
Thanks, Daryl, for not giving out my story.
I didn't say that.
Closing comments, Trinidad and Tobago. We just have about a minute again.
All right, again, your happiness is something that you have to work and earn and grasp for yourself. All right, it's not just going to happen. Take the necessary steps in 2014 to eliminate the things that take away from your happiness and to do the things that build your happiness.
Do the things that build your happiness and eliminate everything that doesn't add to your happiness. And sometimes it's a lot easier than you really think it is. Sometimes, Daryl once told me something. If it doesn't feel right, it normally isn't. So kind of use that to make all the decisions in your life. I'm Hema Rangus, this is the end of the Morning Brew. This is our first show for the year 2014. I wish you a safe and blessed day. And to all of you that made your resolutions, make it a realistic set of goals.